I think I found a comic that appeals to none of my regular commenters. I specifically picked this out when I realised that was the case. I will not name names because it encourages more people to comment if they think that I will not mention them in a video. But there is one regular viewer who does not like the writer of this, David Peter, and finds him almost intolerable. Another viewer, one who has been with the channel since like the first year, he was repulsed when he found out how out of ideas David Peter got with this series and these characters, and how we got to the point where like strong guy murders a baby and becomes the ruler of hell. And finally, the last few months, a more recent subscriber, I think, he has started commenting a lot, and he really hates any mediocre or worse art from the 90s onwards. So this is Extra Factors issue 243, which means it is the 243rd issue of the Extra Factors series. I complained about the recap pages the last time I reviewed an issue of this series, because as a cutesy joke, it mainly just talks about what David Peter has been doing. It is a gag once. After that, it is indulgent and vain, and the fact that the personal life of David Peter is almost 3 times longer than the book's actual recap calls into question why they are even wasting a page on a recap. This issue 243, it focuses on Miss Magnets and her backstory. I am a big fan of Miss Magnets. I like her a lot. In another video, I spoke about how much I pity the character and resent that she is forever defined as just being Pillock's girlfriend, when that relationship is incredibly toxic. Generally speaking, when a boyfriend tries to murder-suicide his girlfriend, and definitely when he tries to do it more than once, it is a good indication that it is an incredibly toxic relationship. And like here is another thing that bothers me. Pillock and everyone around the relationship treats Miss Magnets like she is Pillock's property, or she is owned by Pillock. Multiplication Man suspects that Miss Magnets isn't in a good mood, and rather than talking to her about it and finding out what's wrong, he goes to Pillock to ask what is up, and Pillock just brushes him off like, yeah, she gets like this every now and again. There are many relationships that I didn't like in comics, and I do try to downplay them or only acknowledge the negative points of them. But this is a relationship that I honestly find disgusting. Nobody writing comics has taken the time to research or investigate this pairing. They just assume that it is an awesome pairing because poor Miss Magnets has been attached at the hip to this knobhead almost since her introduction. Enough about one of the worst romantic pairings in comics. This issue instead deals with an aspect of Miss Magnet's that was a bit muddled, because 90% of writers only ever wrote about her as being Pillock's girlfriend, and the other 10% insisted on making her into a baddie. We are looking at Miss Magnet's backstory in this. Like her parents who died in a plane crash, and her subsequent discovery that she is Mr. Magnet's daughter. It is actually a bit more complicated than that. Miss Magnet was introduced, created by Jim Strunke. She was introduced in the late 60s, and she was teased as being Mr. Magnet's daughter. But then it was a robot, and maybe she isn't his daughter after all. Writers just dropped that possible connection to Mr. Magnet's for a long time, until Bucky Larson went back and said that she was Mr. Magnet's daughter. A rare case of something worthwhile coming from his much derided run. After that, writers treated it as if she was his daughter, and that was that. Nobody really explored it though. But here, David Peter, maybe because the Miss Magnets that he wrote in the 90s wasn't Mr. Magnet's daughter. Well, David Peter explains how the Mr. Magnets reveal works in with the previous backstory of her parents dying in a plane crash. I always thought that was a bit too close to Cyclist and Pillock's backstory, the plane crash that took their parents. Miss Magnet's belief as being that the plane crash was caused by her real father, Mr. Magnets. And we have some arsehole boyfriend Pillock here. You could show me a page of him being utterly lovely to Miss Magnets, and I would say it was a con, and he was trying to manipulate her. Plus, there are no pages of him being utterly lovely to Miss Magnets, because he is an actual cunt. So, our setup is that Miss Magnets is finally going to learn the truth about what happened to her mother and the man who she believed for years was her real dad. The problem is that it is far too obvious what this twist is. So, Miss Magnets, through the use of wonky psychic explanations, she gets to go back and watch the plane accident happen. She finds out, as we the reader do as well, that yeah, her mum had an affair with Mr. Magnets, and Miss Magnets was the byproduct of that, and her stepdad is a bit sore about it and plans to murder-suicide them. Maybe David Peter is a genius and a genius writer, and this was him also trying to contextualise why Miss Magnets is even attracted to Pillock. His murder-suicide tendencies remind her of the man who raised her. And Mr. Magnet shows up, but this is a fake out, and as we have all already guessed, little kiddie Miss Magnets, she was on the plane too, and she had repressed this memory because, well, it was actually her and her powers that caused the accident. It's not as much as a bombshell reveal as it maybe should have been. And I am not sure that what the character ever needed was more trauma added to her already impressive list of suffering. But I respect this for being simple and direct, and above all else, sensible. When you get retcons or new looks at characters' pasts, or the secret life of whoever, it is usually bullshit that is trying to force a new narrative or interpretation onto a character. But this isn't doing that. This is just straightforward what Miss Magnets' backstory is. And after this, we get a nice little scene with the real Mr. Magnets. He has come to investigate his daughter, and he decides she is too young to join his evil brotherhood of evil muties of evil. So he has Mr. Mind erase and rewrite her memories of what happened here. You might think it odd for me to praise a scene where Mr. Magnets displays some sympathy and compassion, but I am fine with this. He isn't doing it necessarily out of love or even emotion for his daughter. There is the undercurrent that, had she just been a few years harder, he would have taken her in and she'd have become his soldier like the Flash and Charlotte Witch. And for a David Peter retcon issue, this is actually good. And it ends beautifully with the notion that Pillock doesn't give a fuck and he is annoyed that they have actually somewhat helped Miss Magnets in a way that could eventually make her no longer dependent on him. I fucking hate Pillock. I will never say nice things about him, but I am a bit surprised to have really only nice things to say about this issue. David Peter, for all his problems as a writer, he might be one of the only ones who sees Miss Magnets as more than just Pillock's fuck stump. I do think the reveal was obvious from the very beginning, but I am happy if something makes sense and is obvious, rather than it going the direction of something that doesn't make sense because people have guessed the twist. I don't know if this is a good issue, but I appreciate it for trying to explore and fix and be actually constructive with a character. So I will give it 7 thumbs up.